Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, today we're cracking open a stack of global reports, looking at something really dynamic. Christian church attendance and affiliation. We're talking 2024, 2025 data.
Yeah, and what's clear from the sources is, it's not one simple story. It's not just about decline. We're really seeing two, well, almost opposite narratives playing out across the globe.
Right. For decades, the thinking was pretty much secularization everywhere, especially following the West.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really test that idea against the latest numbers. We've got this story of decline, yeah, but also stabilization in the West, and then completely differently, this explosion of vitality in the global South.
And we want to focus on active participation, right? Not just ticking a box on a census form. Where are people actually going to church?
And where is the real sort of energy center of Christianity today? And maybe most interesting, what's this new data telling us about younger generations? Are we seeing stabilization, even renewal, where we least expect it?
Okay, so let's dive in. Where better to start than the place often seen as, well, the most secular, Scandinavia?
Absolutely. You have
Yeah.
to start there, and Sweden is the classic example, isn't it? The sources back up what you'd expect historically very low numbers. Like,
Really low. Only about 14% of Swedes go to any religious service, even once a year.
right, and weekly. It's tiny.
Yeah.
Less than 2% of the population.
Which is just amazing when you think that, a few generations back, the Church of Sweden was almost everyone. Now it's just over half, 51%, who are members.
And that membership is, well, largely cultural these days.
Yeah, exactly. People connect for the big life moments, funerals, weddings, confirmations, that sort of thing. But not really for Sunday worship, not for the core beliefs. For many, it's more social tradition.
That's the baseline. But here's where the 2024-2025 data throws a curveball. Even with that secular backdrop, something shifted.
What happened?
Well, the Church of Sweden saw a record number of new members join in 2024. Almost 15,000 people.
15,000. Okay, that doesn't sound huge overall, but compared to the trend, that's significant, right? A sign of something changing.
It is. And the really surprising part is who is joining. It's younger people. There were headlines in 2025, calling Jesus a trendy influencer.
Seriously, wow.
Yeah, the sources say about 1 in 3 young Swedes now identify as religious. That's way up from maybe 5–10% in recent decades. It's a real spike in, let's say, spiritual curiosity.
Okay, and is this just Sweden, or do we see hints elsewhere in the region?
Well, if you look next door, Norway has a similar pattern. Still low weekly attendance, like 2%, even though 60% are members. But a fifth of all the new people enrolling in the Church of Norway, they're between 25 and 34.
So young adults actively choosing to join, not just inherited membership.
Precisely. And Finland adds another interesting layer. Again, overall low attendance, but there was this really specific jump in religiosity among young men.
Young men specifically.
Yeah. Age 15 to 29. Their monthly church attendance actually doubled over about 8 years, from 5% up to 12% by 2019. It suggests, maybe a particular search for structure or meaning in that group.
Okay, so Scandinavia shows deep secularism, but with these, surprising little sparks of youth interest. How does this picture look when we zoom out to the rest of Europe and maybe the U.S.?
So zooming out, the overall European average for weekly attendance is still low, hovering around 10%. Western and Northern Europe remain the most secularized, no surprise there.
Right.
But Southern and Eastern Europe, places like Portugal, Poland, they definitely maintain higher rates. But the key thing across the EU is stabilization.
Stabilization how?
Well, the share of people identifying as Christian had been dropping fast, but it seems to have hit a floor. It was about 72% a decade ago. Now it's around 66% in 2024. The decline has really slowed down. The free fall seems over.
Okay, so it's leveling off. And are there places seeing actual increases, like those hints in Scandinavia?
Yes, absolutely. The reports really highlight the UK and Spain, both showing a noticeable surge in young adult engagement since around 2023.
A surge? Like how big?
Well, get this. In Britain, overall church attendance went up 56% across all ages between 2018 and 2024. 56%.
Wow, that's huge. What's driving that?
The sources point overwhelmingly to Gen Z. Their regular attendance, weekly or near weekly, jumped dramatically. It went from just 4% to 16% in that same 6-year window.
16% from 4. That echoes that Nordic curiosity, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests maybe these young people, raised in very secular settings, are now actively looking for something. Community, meaning maybe transcendence, and they're finding it, or at least exploring it, in church.
Okay, so that's Western Europe. General stabilization, some surprising Gen Z interest. How does the U.S. fit into this? We often hear about decline there, too.
The U.S. definitely mirrors that broader Western
Hmm.
decline pattern, yeah. Weekly church attendance was down to less than 35% in 2024. That's a big drop from, say, 47% back in 1990. That was the major shift.
But is it still dropping fast?
Actually, the 2025 research suggests the decline is slowing down quite a bit. It might even be leveling off, especially among some groups like evangelicals and perhaps some younger people looking for meaning, similar to Europe.
And I guess, like Europe, it's not uniform across the country.
No, definitely not. You still see real strength and vitality in the South and the Midwest. And importantly, ethnic minority churches, African American, Latino congregations particularly, often maintain much higher levels of participation and engagement.
Okay, so whether it's the U.S. drop or the European slide, the big question hangs there. Why? Why did the West see this huge secular shift over decades? What reasons do leaders or sociologists give?
Right, this is the crucial why question. Synthesizing the sources, there seem to be four main explanations put forward. First, and perhaps broadest, is just secularization and individualism.
Which basically means society emphasizing personal freedom, making choices like a consumer, focusing on material things.
Exactly. And that mindset, it doesn't always mesh well with the demands of communal religion, shared beliefs, discipline, commitment to an institution.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second factor?
Second is something called generational replacement. This is more of a demographic process.
So, older, more religious generations passing away and younger, less affiliated ones taking their place.
Pretty much. Each new generation inherits fewer church-centered habits and values from the previous one. It's not always active rejection. Sometimes it's just drift. Fewer people are raised in it, so fewer people stay.
Right. Less passing it down. Okay, third.
The third one's more of an internal critique from within the churches themselves. It's often called the loss of gospel centrality.
Meaning the core message got watered down.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
That the original focus on, repentance, redemption, needing salvation got replaced by other things. Maybe self-help advice, maybe political activism, maybe just entertainment.
And the idea is, if the core spiritual message isn't there or isn't compelling, people don't see the point of staying.
Precisely. If it doesn't offer something genuinely transformative that they can't get elsewhere, why commit?
Okay. And the fourth reason. This one feels very relevant today.
Yeah, it's scandals and institutional distrust. High-profile cases of abuse, financial misconduct, hypocrisy. These have seriously damaged the credibility of church institutions in many people's eyes.
Right, the trust is broken.
And this directly fuels that whole believing without belonging phenomenon. People might still have spiritual beliefs, maybe pray privately, but they just don't want to be associated with the institution they see as flawed or even harmful. That hits attendance hard.
That really frames the stabilization point, doesn't it? Maybe the searching is still there or returning, but people are wary of the structures.
Could be. Could be.
Okay, so that's the West. Decline, stabilization, some youth curiosity, and a set of reasons why it got this way. But this is only half the story, right? Let's totally switch gears now. Where is Christianity actually booming?
Yeah, now we pivot. Because the data paints an entirely different picture elsewhere. The undeniable new center of gravity for global Christianity is the Global South. And the growth there isn't small. It's massive.
You mean Africa, Asia, Latin America?
Primarily, yes. Africa is just dominant. It's now home to over 750 million Christians. Think about that number. And the fastest growth is in Middle Africa, expanding over 3% per year. That's incredibly rapid growth.
And this isn't just people saying they're Christian, it's active participation.
Oh, absolutely. Look at Nigeria. It has, according to the sources, the highest weekly church attendance globally, even amid terrible persecution and instability.
How high are we talking?
Get this, 94% of Nigerian Catholics attend Mass every single week. 94%. You just don't see numbers like that in wealthy Western nations. Kenya, Congo also report incredibly high, vibrant attendance.
That's staggering. What about other regions? Asia.
Asia's growth is maybe quieter, but still profound, growing at about 1.6% per year overall, often in places where it's difficult or dangerous to be Christian.
Like where?
Well, the Philippines stands out, 56% weekly Mass attendance among Catholics there. And China, despite government controls, continues to see rapid expansion, especially in house churches, the underground networks. It shows incredible resilience.
And Latin America. Still a stronghold.
Very much so. Still very robust. Countries like Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, you're seeing 50% or more attending weekly in several nations. Often this energy comes from Pentecostal and charismatic movements, which really emphasize personal spiritual experience, lively worship, community outreach.
Okay, so it's two completely different worlds. The wealthy West, stabilizing after decline, grappling with skepticism, and the global South, seeing explosive growth, high participation, often amid poverty or hardship. What is driving that incredible vitality outside the West?
Well, the drivers seem fundamentally different, almost the mirror image of the factors causing decline in Europe and North America.
Mm.
The first one is a powerful spiritual hunger amid modernization.
So unlike the West, where maybe comfort led to complacency, here rapid change, social, economic, creates instability and makes people search for deeper answers.
Exactly. When life is unpredictable, when traditional structures are changing fast, people actively seek meaning, hope, stability, often divine help, and they find it in faith communities.
Okay, what else?
Second is a very strong emphasis on active evangelism and discipleship. These churches don't just rely on people being born into the faith.
They expect members to share it.
Yes. There's a strong culture of lay involvement, of everybody sharing the gospel. And often it's local believers, including women, playing really crucial roles who lead this relational outreach. It's very grassroots.
And the third point you mentioned earlier, the role of hardship.
Right. Resilience through persecution and hardship. This is maybe the hardest for a Western mindset to grasp. But in places like Nigeria or parts of Asia, facing adversity doesn't seem to push people away from God.
It pulls them closer.
It seems to drive a deeper reliance on faith, not as a cultural accessory, but as essential for survival, for hope, for meaning, when earthly comforts are scarce or unreliable.
Okay. That reliance must tie into the community aspect, too.
Absolutely. That's the fourth driver. Strong community life and social support. These churches are often much more than just Sunday services. They function as vital social networks. They provide real, tangible help, food banks, healthcare clinics, schools, job connections. This practical support strengthens the fellowship, it draws people in, and it makes the church community incredibly relevant to everyday life.
So faith and practical life are deeply intertwined. And the last driver.
It's about the nature of the faith itself, biblical authority and spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Generally, these growing churches hold a very high view of the Bible's authority. They preach with strong convictions.
And expect faith to have real-world impact.
Yes, there's often an expectation of miracles, of divine intervention. And the worship itself tends to be very vibrant, dynamic, emotional, spirit-filled is the term often used.
Yeah.
It's an engaging, powerful experience, which can feel very different from more formal, traditional Western services.
Okay, so putting it all together, we really have these two huge, contrasting global stories unfolding.
We do. You've got the secular West facing challenges, seeing decline level off, maybe fueled by a flicker of youth curiosity, searching for meaning after the institutions faded.
And then you have the global South, where Christianity is just exploding resilient, growing incredibly fast, driven by deep spiritual hunger, community need, and often thriving precisely where life is hardest.
Yeah, it really boils down to that. It suggests that while maybe cultural or institutional belonging is fading in comfortable societies, that basic human spiritual hunger, it's still there globally and seemed to find its most dynamic expression where people are most dependent on it, not just for Sunday, but for survival.
Which leads us to a really provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. The data strongly suggests that the places with the most intense persecution, the greatest economic hardship, they often see the most vibrant, numerically growing churches.
So the question to reflect on is this. If comfort and wealth seem to correlate with religious decline in the West, could it be that hardship, whether it's economic, social, or cultural pressure, actually acts as a kind of catalyst? A necessary ingredient, perhaps, for sparking authentic, deep-rooted spiritual vitality and growth.
Something to definitely chew on. That's our deep dive for today.